Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. My name is James Moser and I am your worship leader, worship associate for this morning's service. Whether you are present here in the sanctuary today or joining us via streaming, whether you are already part of our family or joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We welcome you no matter where you came from or where you're going. We welcome you no matter your gender, race, age, or beliefs. We welcome you no matter your status, ethnicity, quirks, or abilities. We welcome you no matter your accomplishments or failures, your hopes or your fears, your loves or your sorrows. At first, you are welcome here. If you are new to First U, we invite you to visit our website, firstuwilm.org, to learn more about us and to sign up for our newsletter. Today we welcome our guest musician, Margaret Love, back to the keyboards. And a welcome it is. And our speaker today is our very own Ed Scott, who will be offering us the sermon, What's in Your Jukebox? Focusing on community and getting proximate with one another. Ed will remind us that by keeping our individual gifts strong, we can share and contribute to the good of all. And this important announcement from Beverly Baxter regarding an upcoming event. Next Sunday, September 25th at 3 p.m., we're going to have the first big musical event at the church since COVID-19 put a halt to such performances. David Shalat will perform an organ concert on our Rieger organ. Today we get to hear Margaret Love on the organ as a foretaste. Newer members may not know how famous our organ is and how Margaret, a former music director here at First U, was instrumental in the church selecting and installing the Rieger organ. It was the first tracker organ in Delaware, and after its installation, organists came from far and wide to perform on our magnificent instrument. Next Sunday, David Shalat, one of Delaware's finest organists, will pull out all the stops, literally and figuratively, probably, as he shows what our organ can do. We'll not only get to see David's hands and feet dancing across the keys, but his feet will not be dancing on the keys. They will be dancing on the pedals, and most of us will at least have some glimpse of that activity. Please come. The Counterpoint Society is sponsoring this performance and would like you to join us in celebrating music and our magnificent Rieger organ. Now let us prepare our minds and hearts to enter that space-time of special consciousness that we call sacred, leaving the trivial at the doorstep. It'll still be there when you leave, and opening ourselves to the deep needs and hopes at our center. Let us worship.
This morning's call to worship is by Gretchen Haley, a UU minister serving the UU Church of Fort Collins, Colorado. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. And in a culture that teaches us to get for what we give and to ask, what's in it for me? We come to practice generosity and to remember we're all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing, to give thanks, to laugh together, and to be keepers of beauty, to offer a place of belonging for all who come in gladness or in pain, to resist the push to the next moment and the next and the next, to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater. For this hour and in this space, let us be the change that we wish to be. Come, let us worship together.
If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to join us in lighting it now with these words of Reverend Karen LeBlanc on belonging, which is our Soul Matters theme for September. This isn't just a place of worship. This isn't just a fellowship of like minds. This isn't just a Sunday morning filled with spirit topped off with coffee and cookies. This is our church, our congregation. We are building beloved community where we are opening ourselves to each other, where we trust and love, where we rise and fall together. This is where we feel safe. This is where we know we are welcomed. This is where we belong. For this gift and so many others, we light our chalice. Let us rise in body or spirit and sing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When
Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
This morning's words for meditation are written by Richard Gilbert. The human race is a vast rainbow, white, black, yellow, and brown, bursting into view. Yet for all, the blood is red, the sky is blue, the earth brown, the night dark. The size and shape we are is a varied pattern of tall and short, slim and stout, elegant and plain. Yet for all there are fingers to touch, hearts to break, eyes to cry, ears to hear, and mouths to speak. In tongue, we are a Tower of Babel, a great jumble of voices grasping for words, groping for ways to say love, peace, pity, hope. Faiths compete, claiming the one way. Saviors abound, pointing to salvation. Not all can be right. We are united only by our urge to search. Boundaries divide us, drawn to mark our diversity, maps charted to separate the human race from itself. Yet a mother's grief, a father's love, a child's happy cry, a musician's sound, or an artist's stroke batter the boundaries and shatter the walls. Strength and weakness, arrogance and humility, confidence and fear, live together in each one, reminding us that we share a common humanity. We are all more human than otherwise. And I invite you now into a moment of shared silence and reflection. As is our custom, now is the time to lift up the names of those who are on our hearts and on our minds, who are in need of some comfort and some peace. Those of you joining online can enter the names into the chat, and those who are present can speak those names out loud of those for whom you have care. May those names entered into the chat, those names spoken here in person, feel the gentle touch of all of us and know peace and healing on this day. This morning's reading is by Khalil Gibran. The title is Fear. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages, and in front of her, she sees a vast ocean. That to enter, there seems to be nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean. It's about becoming the ocean. This morning, I want to share a story with you. The names of the people in the story are fictitious, but not the events. They're real. It began with a text message I received calling for volunteers to help. Several families were being evicted because their housing had been condemned as unsuitable for habitation. Volunteers were needed to help move the families. A link was attached with a news article explaining the situation, and maybe you read about it. The properties had been found to have over 372 code violations. There were 27 units in 7 buildings, some single-room units. The tenants had been vacated immediately, and on this coming Saturday, they were allowed to return to recover their belongings. I looked at the address, and it was about 4 blocks from my house. I had passed the row of houses many times, admiring their facades and wondering what stories they could tell about Wilmington. I was available on Saturday and could walk over. So I replied, yes, I can help. What time? The reply, 8 a.m. Be there. So early on that Saturday morning, I made the 5-minute or so walk. As I walked along, questions entered my mind. Who were these people who could live in this kind of housing? Why did these people stay in this housing? Didn't they complain to anyone before things got so out of hand? If they lived in these conditions, what must their belongings be like? These units must be a real mess. Who would possibly put up with this? Would I be able to relate to these people? As I turned the last corner, I saw moving boxes and furniture neatly lined up in front of a few of the homes. And I was met in one of the front yards by Tom, one of the volunteer organizers, who explained that he was part of an ad hoc group of advocates that had issued the call for help. They had served together in years past at Dover Air Force Base, and they kept in touch with each other periodically and when they became aware of special needs such as this one. They had supplied moving boxes to the families, and Tom said rental trucks were on the way, and when they arrived, we could help begin loading the belongings into the truck. 3 months of storage had been prepaid for each family in case they needed that much time to find other housing. As I looked around, it became clear that all of the tenants were people of color. And the community volunteers, like me, were white. I wondered if we would be viewed as interlopers. Would our help be welcome? As Tom and I continued talking, one of the tenants came out of his unit and said that the plaster ceiling had just collapsed on his sofa. As I would hear over the next few hours, there were also many serious water problems in the units. The organizers had thought ahead and had brought coolers with water, and they even made arrangements for lunch to feed the families and the volunteers. And thanks to the generosity of Grotto Pizza, there was more than enough for all. The pizza was also shared with anyone who came by that day in need of food. The families were to pack their own belongings, help load the trucks when they arrived, and as it happened, the large rental truck that had been reserved for that Saturday morning wouldn't start when one of the helpers went to pick it up. So it took a few hours of searching to find another truck that was large enough, and one was located in New Jersey. The tenants were also expected to accompany the trucks to the self-storage facility in Newark. As you can see, this was a very organized effort being put forth. Some of the tenants had places to stay with family or friends until new housing was found. And the county had opened some space at the Hope Center for a few of the families, which, by the way, the Hope Center is the subject of an Emmy-nominated short documentary. And if you're not familiar with the Hope Center, you should check it out. It's a great story right here in Newcastle County. As we worked together loading their belongings, the stories came out. Mary told of how bad the mice and rats were, and even though they had been given those little tent sticky traps for mice, she said these are urban rodents. They just push them aside and move on. They don't do any good. Another tenant, Susan, told how one wall of her unit leaked so badly when it rained that she couldn't even catch the water in a bucket. It was just like a waterfall coming down the side of her housing unit. Also, her electricity would sometimes flicker on and off when it rained. And some mornings when she left for work, she just prayed that her unit would be there when she returned. Efforts to have the landlord address the problems were futile, as the landlord would typically hire someone off the street, give them a few dollars, and ask them to make some minor repairs when obviously major work was required. Efforts to have the landlord do work were indeed futile. Why it took so long for the city to address this situation, I don't know, but it took far too long. One of the first people whose belongings we loaded was John. John had only a few boxes, a table, a bed, and some fishing gear. One of his neighbors came over and said, "John, what are you doing? You don't fish anymore." And John remarked, "I know, but it's nice to hold it and to remember the good times." I thought of similar things I've kept as reminders, such as my fencing gear, which it's been years since I picked up a foil or a saber, but over the years they've accompanied me on several moves. That day was long, but through the course of the day, I heard about other prized possessions. I saw neighbors who cared for each other and had good spirit. One tenant, I didn't get her name, but she was certainly my age or more, came over to me as I was trying to figure out how many of us it would take to lift this 7-foot wide, low bureau chest of drawers. I hefted it, and it seemed really heavy. It must have been made of solid wood. She told me to be careful. She had bought that when she got married, and wherever she goes, that goes. Be careful, take care of it. Well, It took several young men to carefully load that bureau under her supervision. And I noticed one of the young men was wearing an orange wristband that said, "Go Tigers." Being a college football fan, I knew that it had to be the Clemson Tigers. So I asked him if he was a Tigers fan. He then related to me that he had accompanied his cousin to Clemson to a football camp. "You should see that place," he said. "All the trophies and their facilities. It's like a palace." I loved that place. A small conversation, but a step in talking as neighbors would, sharing a common interest. There were about 10 volunteers like me from the surrounding community, as well as other family members or friends who came to help. And in working together and listening to conversations throughout the day, it became apparent that these were hardworking people doing the best they could. And even though moving was not their first choice, they were glad that finally the landlord was being forced to face the problems. Now, I've never experienced being evicted or the attendant disruption. I wondered, what would I be feeling at a time like this? Would I be ready to move on? Would my friends come and help and work all day? Where would I go? Would I be seeking revenge against the landlord or the city? I still have lingering questions about where the city had been all this time. But as I reflected back on the experience and the ease of working together, I was struck by the questions that had filled my mind as I approached the work that day. It was then that it occurred to me that the mind is like a jukebox. It holds voices that I don't necessarily choose. Now, some of you probably remember these devices. You often find them at the end of a table in a diner. And when you'd go in, you'd look at the list and you'd flip through looking for that one song that you wanted to play that you thought everybody should hear. Well, at any rate, I often recall sitting in the diner in my Jersey hometown, sitting with my friends and arguing over which songs should we pick first, and obviously it was always the person that held the money who got to make the choice. And I remember making my selection, and often it would be something like, "It's Judy's Turn to Cry," or "He's So Fine" by the Chiffons, still one of my favorites. And then listen. But wait, that's not my song playing. Oh no, someone chose one of those stupid chipmunk songs. Often, you have to listen to selections made by others. Isn't the mind like that? Thoughts we did not choose unexpectedly come to the fore. It isn't as if we have consciously thought this out or even articulated it within the mind, but it's there. I had worked to increase my awareness and understanding of others, especially since coming to the UU faith. I was good in that regard. I had done the work. I had embraced the inherent worth and dignity of every person, worked on my prejudices and my biases. What happened to those voices? Here I was, making judgments, asking questions in my mind about people I'd never seen. What did I know about dealing with an unresponsive landlord, or having so little choice about where I could live? What did I know about working hard, doing the best I could, but still not being able to afford decent housing? We need to learn to understand one another while not judging burdens, but taking a look at how well the burdens are carried. Let's think about that. not judging burdens, but looking at how well burdens are carried. But years of hearing other voices, of socialization, isn't easy to purge. It requires ongoing work. And yes, like waiting for your selection at the jukebox, it requires patience, as we often have to fend off those other voices. It almost felt like these were mini demons that I had thought I had removed. Do you ever have an experience like that? Despite these voices, I need to step out, take some risk, widen my circle. When I've done that, it has been enriching in many ways, as was true on this Saturday. This experience also reminded me of Brian Stevenson and how he talks about the need to get proximate with one another. That's how we find common bonds. That's how differences fall away. That's how we learn to live together, how we rise together. It won't happen by going separate ways and staying in our private silos. Recently, I was reading Braiding Sweetgrass, and the author writes about the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, which are indigenous ancestors always planted in the same hill in their gardens. These plants fuel each other, and there are layers upon layers of reciprocity, nutritionally and physically. It's a manifestation of what a community can be when we understand and share our gifts. As the author states, it's about relationship. The gifts of each are more fully expressed when they are nurtured together than alone. Gifts are multiplied in relationship. In the cycle of giving and receiving, we become stronger. This is how the world keeps going. Together, not in separateness. These are voices which are important to hear, as they drown out the ones which set up barriers, keep me separate, prevent me from becoming truly welcoming to all. I am determined to build a better jukebox and load up the selections with voices which remind me of my UU values: justice, compassion, acceptance. What are the voices in your jukebox? Do they need updating? Years ago, when Eastern Airlines was still in existence, they had an advertising campaign centered on the slogan, "At Eastern Airlines, we need to earn our wings every day." That has stuck with me, even if Eastern Airlines did not. I decided I'm going to start my day with a new slogan. As I greet the face in the mirror, I'm going to say, I will live my UU values every day. And for your information, that selection will be A1 on the jukebox. And if you listen carefully, maybe you can hear it too. In closing, I want to return to the words of Gibran, which I have adapted. It is said that before entering the sea, I tremble to hold what is dear. Looking back at the path I have traveled from the peaks of the mountains, along winding roads through plains and cities, and in front of me, I see a world so vast that to enter there seems like nothing but to disappear. Risk losing my identity, but there is no other way. One cannot go back. Like the river, I need to take a risk, because only then will fear disappear, because that's when I will know it's not about disappearing or giving up. It's about hope. It's about our commonality, our very humanness. It's about embracing the sum of us in all its possibilities. May it ever be so.
Gratitude does not require an object. That's not a bumper sticker saying, although I'd be delighted to see it on one. It's a reminder that gratitude is a spiritual exercise and that it has tangible expression. Gratitude does not require an object. Means that being thankful does not always mean being thankful for something. As if gratitude were a quid pro quo. Somebody gives me something, I feel grateful for it. That's not a spiritual exercise, that's a cultural transaction. Gratitude does not require an object, means living with a consciousness of gratefulness, no matter what we do or don't receive. It means intentionally being grateful. It's gratitude as an attitude. When we are grateful, regardless of the external things of life, and even regardless of the inner turmoil we may be experiencing, when we are grateful, we accomplish at least three ends. One, when we are grateful, we are happy, content, and in harmony with life. Two, When we are grateful, we radiate that happy, content harmony in the world. What more could one person ever expect to contribute to a community? Well, I'll tell you. 3, an attitude of gratitude inspires, reminds, and prods us to be generous in many ways as we are able through giving of our time, talents, and gifts. Indeed, gratitude does not require an object, but the ministry of First U does require our gifts of support to sustain our work of ministry. There are 4 ways you can give to the church, as displayed on your screen. For those here in the sanctuary, you can leave cash or checks in the box at the back. You can always mail a check to the church. I've even dropped them off. It's nice to see the staff, and they're happy to see you when you bring a check. You can go online to our website and donate. Or you can use the Vanco Mobile Faith Engagement app on your smartphone to make a contribution. Thank you for your generosity. And now, would you join me in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives and these our offerings. First, a special thank you to Margaret for being with us today and giving us an introduction to a magnificent instrument. Thank you. And to Ed, your words will be a staple for us moving forward this week. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it with us here in the sanctuary as I paraphrase the words of Reverend Karen LeBlanc that we heard at the outset. This isn't just a place of worship. This isn't just a gathering of the like-minded. This isn't just a social club with coffee cake. This is us, our home, our family, our people, where now at the end of our service we harbor more love and trust than when we came. This is where we find safety, belonging, and courage. And now it is time to extinguish our flame, to depart, to go, to carry the flame within us, to broadcast the love, the trust, and the courage in the world. May it be so. Let us join together, ending our service with hymn number 318, We Would Be One.
In benediction for this morning, may the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and for always. Amen.